Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pals Go to the Movies. Touly is busy, so I will be reviewing Death on the Nile by myself. So just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. While on vacation on the Nile, Hercule Poirot must investigate the murder of a young heiress. So let's begin with my first pro. I like how this was already teased at the end of the previous film, Murder on the Orient Express, but they did say there was a murder in the Nile, but maybe the detective had already solved it before this movie picked up. So we can call it a mistake, but I am sure the writer will come up with something as an excuse, maybe like he solved that case and now he's here on vacation tracking down Bo or something of that sort. So let's just be happy that we got this movie, even if it is 5 years late since the first one. Next point is how the director, Kenneth Branagh, played Hercule Poirot so well, and I must say that mustache is amazing, right on point, along with the humor the actor brings to the character. It is like watching a comedy with all his mannerisms and dialogue that he goes through, especially the accent. Well done. I think that is the reason I went to see both films, just for the detective, or maybe because I am a fan of the game Professor Layton, or maybe I'm a fan of murder mysteries in general. Moving on to my next point is the power of the cast in the film. Like, wow, you have big names, and I mean big names. They all play roles that were one way or another important and not just there to be in the background and just have a huge name attached to a secondary character. But with this comes the issue, like, are their acting skills well paired with each other, or will they be taking over the scenes from one another? But I, for the most part, felt that the film revolved around the detective and two couples. Oh, and yeah, there was a case to be solved of a simple murder that happened on the ship. But I really focused on the detective and these two couples in the movie. Next point, since this is a series by Agatha Christie, I felt that it's safe to say that if this one makes enough money, we will see more of the detective in future chapters. Also, I feel that it is time for the detective to take on an apprentice or a love interest, and I felt that the film did the second one quite subtle at the end of the movie, or was it just me looking too deep into it? Now, moving on to my cons. The caliber of the cast and the way it carries with it. We have Gal Gadot, just as we had Johnny Depp in the first one, just like the South Park meme says, and now they're gone. They get killed off rather early in the films, but we saw them everywhere in the marketing, posters, and campaign commercials and so forth. I know you're like, but Sal, how can there be a movie with no one dying at the start of the movie to start off the case? Well, I get it, but just like how they got big names, there should be a bigger impact that these characters play into the movie, even if they die right off. So maybe add a little more to the characters' backstory or something more than what we saw in this film with the beginning. Which brings me to my next con, which is the characters. We saw play two roles, the role we saw develop on screen and the one the detective had previous knowledge to, which he shared it with others in the film and indirectly telling us, bringing us up to date with the information. Yes, it is always the detective's job to shine light on the background of characters, and the suspects don't know about each other, but this movie had a lot of those moments. I know there is always the detective saying this person had this motive because of this information that we are not privileged to, but it should have done it subtly and less quite often. Which brings me to my next con, which isn't really a con, and that is the backstory of the detective, which isn't detailed in the novels of Agatha Christie, and thus we do not know much about him, and I really wanted to get to know him and his backstory that they give us in the film versus the novel, which doesn't shed any backstory on the character. But think, wouldn't it be cool if he had like a rival detective? Now, moving on to my last con, just like all the couch detective who went to see the film, I wanted to solve it alongside with the detective as his sidekick, but like any murder mystery, each character has their own reason to commit the murder, but when we have unknown knowledge, which the detective has on each character, we are playing poker with less cards. We can never really reach a determining outcome since we are not privileged to the knowledge that the detective has. So when he solves the case, we can just be like, I saw that since the beginning, and you know, the way they saw each other, which gave them away, that sort of thing. But we are also looking at other scenes that are just placed in the film as red herrings, which means the filmmakers are throwing us off because the detective doesn't see what we're seeing. He's not even in there, but when we are looking at some scenes, we are looking as a hovering eye for every character that we start to meet. So this is not a real solve the case at home kind of movie, but just a sit back and watch the story unfold and enjoy the mustache. So overall, this movie was fun to watch because of the detective himself, and I really hope they make a prequel to his early years, maybe like a Netflix series. I know they've done that before, but not in his younger years. Think about it. The early years of the detective Hercule Poirot, narrated by Kenneth, reading the the cases over to maybe someone, but the character in the series when it starts off is played by a younger actor, but every episode has this beginning narration by Kenneth. And maybe we even see the mustache go through different alterations as the series goes along, maybe like him trying different hats, but he messes around with his mustache instead. But I digress. I enjoyed the film, but I wish it had more solve the case as we go with the evidence that we see on screen, and not here is some new information that only me as the character in the film knew and not the audience, sort of thing. So my grade for this movie is going to be a 6 out of 10. Depending if the series does continue, I might go see it or I might not. So that does it for this review of Death on the Nile. Please join us next time when we still don't know which film we're going to review. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below, and like always, keep watching movies.